What is up, everybody? Wanted to give some thoughts here after the U.S. men's national team announced its Gold Cup roster, and most notably, Christian Pulisic was not on it. That is the only place to begin this conversation. And there are a couple things I want to say here. Number one, it is important to note that according to the statement that was released, Christian Pulisic approached the U.S. Federation about this idea of him not playing. Clearly, he's carrying some knocks, injury, he's hurt, whatever terminology you want to use. And, of course, he is playing too many games in too many minutes. That is undeniable. However, that is also the reality for just about everybody. And so, to have him approach U.S. soccer instead of the other way around about this idea, when there are plenty of other players who have played big minutes as well, and yes, this 27-man roster is significantly bolstered by MLS, but you also have guys who just went through a full European season, sends a really problematic message. And it sends a really problematic message, not that Christian Pulisic doesn't care or that he's not serious about this team or anything like that. But entering this tournament, there are two realities that have to take precedence over everything else. First, these are the last competitive games the U.S. men's national team is going to play before hosting a World Cup. And you were going to miss some players because of the Club World Cup, but you are not going to be able to simulate the competitive nature of these games again. The second is that right now, based on form, they are at best the third best team in this region. I know they have dominated CONCACAF trophies outside of the last CONCACAF Nations League, but right now, based on what's going on, Canada and Mexico are clearly ahead of them, and you can make an argument that they're not even number 3. Those two things are why this tournament matters. Because you have to give this fan base something to believe in again, heading into the World Cup. If this is supposed to change soccer in this country, and this is supposed to be everything, something everybody gets behind, you have to give reason to be optimistic heading into the World Cup. There's a reason why the women's national team gets all of this support before every major tournament. It's because you go in knowing they have a chance to win. Average sports fans in this country are probably not, or less, at least less likely to tune in if they don't feel like something cool can happen and this team can have success. And right now, obviously, for multiple years, has been trending in the complete opposite direction. And so now to have your best player not play in this tournament, to not get these reps, to not play in this competitive environment, to not help this team turn this around and build some confidence heading into next summer, is somewhere between incredibly disappointing and inexcusable. It's in the middle of those two. And there are certainly reasons why Pulisic feels like it's in his best interest not to play. And that very well might be the case. However, the only data you're going to have to make that kind of determination is going to come after the World Cup. And at that point, maybe there's no guarantee we're ever going to get the answer. Right? Okay, if the U.S. goes on a terrific run, Pulisic's one of the best players in the tournament, then you can look at this and say it was probably a good idea. If the U.S. fails to get out of the group, it's a horrible idea. But regardless of how it plays out, because you can't control that, the other issue I have here is that there is no indication other than the idea of hopefully if he plays less minutes and puts less strain on his body, he will be healthier and fresher, that this is going to have any impact whatsoever on next summer. To me, it's illogical to draw that conclusion and say that this is going to, in some way, mean something for his performance in the World Cup next summer. I just don't buy that. Maybe it does help him. But he could also go out there the first week with AC Milan and get hurt. You just don't know. And so all of that being thrown into the equation, to me, there are too many reasons why this tournament matters to let Pulisic excuse himself from it, unless he is injured to the point where it is not a good idea medically for him to play. Maybe that is what is happening here. But based on what everybody is saying and what has been reported, that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be more of a rest load management situation. And I understand he's got to rest somewhere, and AC Milan certainly aren't going to do that because they're the ones paying his salary. But it's also not the U.S. men's national team's job to rest him in these kind of situations. Yes, work with AC Milan. Don't play him 90 minutes in back-to-back games in qualifying or friendlies or whatever. That makes complete sense. Leave him out for some friendly squads if you want. I got no issue with that either. But there is too much riding on this tournament to let these key players, and Jedi Robinson falls in this category too, not participate. That's how I feel about it. Now that we got that part out of the way, I do want to mention 3 players in particular that I am very curious about going into this tournament that are on the roster, because Pulisic's going to be the headline, but then we're actually going to go play these games. Number 1, the player I am most happy to see on this roster is Alex Freeman of Orlando City. Alex Freeman is not going to be in Major League Soccer very long. And that is one of the interesting things about some of these MLS players here. Some of them are more of the journeyman type, but there are also some other ones who are clearly on a trajectory to Europe. So this idea of, I don't want MLS players, this is where I really don't buy that. Because Alex Freeman is not an MLS player. He is a European level player playing in MLS for this moment because, well, he hadn't played before this season. You know, this is his breakout season. This is where everybody went, oh, this guy is a problem. And it's not just the goal involvement, though that's terrific to have from an outside back. It's his physical presence. It's the way he impacts games on both ends of the field. He is really unlike any outside back I've ever seen. And yes, I'm an MLS person, so maybe I'm getting a little too excited about this. But I really, really believe in him. And I am really excited to see what he can do. And this is a position that Serginho Dest is probably your starter if Serginho Dest is healthy, but there is no guarantee that's going to be the case. You don't know what Serginho Dest's situation is going to be. And outside of him, nobody has really locked down positions here. There is every opportunity for Alex Freeman to play himself onto that World Cup roster as one of the outside backs. And that starts with having a really good tournament here. Hopefully he gets the opportunity to do that. Number 2, the other person that needs to be mentioned in this conversation is Sebastian Berhalter. Yes, he's a Berhalter. Yes, creates a little bit of an awkward situation. But more importantly, he is a midfielder in exceptional form on perhaps the best team in Major League Soccer. And he is a midfielder who scores goals. And Weston McKennie scores goals for Juventus, but Weston McKennie doesn't score all that many for the U.S. men's national team. This is a midfield, speaking strictly from a national team standpoint, that doesn't score very many goals. Having somebody in there who gives you a little bit of a different quality and plays the position a little bit differently could be really interesting. Is he good enough to actually unseat all of these midfielders? Probably not. It's not just McKennie, Musa, Adams. It's also Luca De La Torre, Johnny Cardoso. There are quickly becoming a lot of options in the midfield here. But he's going to get his opportunity. He deserves his opportunity. I'm also really glad that he is on this roster. Let's see what he can do. Third, not a newcomer, but perhaps the the player with the most at stake in this tournament. Outside of, I mean, you could maybe make a case for the goalkeepers, maybe a case for the strikers, since those two positions are so up for grabs. But it's a singular player. To me, it's Malik Tillman. At some point, he needs to deliver on a national team level. Phenomenal season for PSV. There's no question that he is an excellent player with the kind of talent that earns you a spot on a World Cup roster. But he hasn't shown it in a national team setting. And now for him to be in a squad like this, where you don't have the same level of competition for those places, where you are looked at as one of the top players on this squad, one of the favorites, if you will, the opportunity is there. He should lock down a starting spot. He should be one of the best, most important players on this team. Because you look at the names, and if you look at the depth chart right now, he is way higher than most of the guys on this squad. And especially in a midfield where you don't have Musa, you don't have McKinney, there are minutes to be had. There are opportunities there. Malik Tillman, let's see if he can take advantage of it. Because this really could go a long way toward determining whether he makes this World Cup squad or not. Certainly it's not the be-all, end-all. But if he doesn't deliver again in this situation with this squad, if you're Mauricio Pochettino, you really got to ask yourself, no matter what he does next season, club-wise, you really have to ask yourself if it's worth it. If you can trust him to deliver in the World Cup next summer. So those are just some quick thoughts with this Gold Cup squad being released. Did not exactly expect it to be this big of a deal, but here we are. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.